that progress has been made in holding children's homes accountable since the Judith Jones report. We had 18 people voting on the poll this morning in the allotted time. Of the 18, 17 said no. They did not think that progress has been made. 1 said yes.
I have 9. I have 18-1 actually.
Yeah. Oh, you have 18-1. Well, you could be right. I could have missed one.
Yeah.
So we'll go with your result. 18-1.
Yeah.
So
one doesn't change, yes, but I just have
18,
1 more no.
And 1 more no. So 19 and all. Okay.
All right. So that's our poll this morning. So we'll see if they actually go back to St. Dominic's home today, because the article says that they'll be going back to St. Dominic's home today to access the cabinet with the records of the people who were there in the past. Let's see what comes out of that. So I wish Senior Superintendent Claire Allen all the best. I know she's a very hard-working officer attached to the Child Protection Unit. She's been there for quite some time, actually. She might have been actually the first person to head that unit and has remained there since. So let's see what comes out of this episode.
So what is well, yeah, we'll just have to remain and wait and see what takes place out of that. Even though it may not be as dramatic as we're making it sound, or as the newspapers listed it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
All right. Of course, Mr. Dixon will join us in a couple of minutes.
Yep. And we're talking policing. Mr. Dixon, of course, is head of the Police Service Social and Welfare Association. And we haven't heard from them for quite some time. We haven't heard from them in terms of all that's been happening in the police service with police officers. So we'll get a sense from, is it Inspector Dixon? Why have they been so silent on so many issues? And are they being called upon? Because I know that officers reach out to the association to assist with representation, because I'm sure a lot of them will have to be legally represented at some point in time. So we'll get a sense of what's happening there. But the other story, as I said, gentlemen, is the police commissioner apparently saying that the video quality with the accident involving Anthony Harris is of poor quality.
Yeah.
And so apparently they can't get to whoever it is that may have killed Anthony Harris. I don't know that they did it on purpose, but it's just crazy that somebody could go out on this on.
But we have spoken about these cameras, the percentage of cameras that are not working now for a long time, and nothing was done.
But imagine if that was, and if you guys remember, I don't know if you all remember, there was an incident around President's house in that same area years ago, where former President, former First Lady Zaleha Hassan Ali was going back home, and it was alleged that the car was shot at. You remember that? Or do you remember that? Yeah, that happened under with President Noor Hassan Ali. Zaleha Hassan Ali was going back home, and it was alleged that the car was shot at that point in time. So could you imagine a camera footage around the president's house has poor quality?
We have a serious problem with maintenance.
After that incident so many years ago?
Yeah, that has to be unacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
And I know the Minister of National Security did indicate that there is a drive by the state to deal with buying new cameras to replace those that obviously are not working. Apparently, there's a potential. There's some that are not working and are beyond repair, and also to have a regimen of how those cameras are maintained, because obviously that's not working too. If you could have so many inconsistencies in performance, it means obviously that maintenance of the cameras and how that schedule is being maintained has to be addressed. And interestingly enough, I was watching BBC last night, and they had an issue of new cameras that were being outfitted in some area in England, because England is camera country.
Oh yeah.
And they were putting in some new cameras, and of course those cameras were connecting, I think, to the 5G, I think, and they were wireless cameras, and they were showing you it was also connected to software and AI that was able to start, was a learning AI that could, and the camera only came on once it detected movement. So it wasn't just constantly recording. They were trying to make it more efficient in terms of the carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So it was only recording incidents and would flag incidents according to what it analyzed in the photograph.
Right.
And so the AI has a learning curve. So they were, it's all the setting up of saying, well, this is obviously somebody walking with garbage, and this may be cause of concern. And so it was interesting, of course, of how they were using cameras at a more sophisticated level than we were, because of course they've been doing it for so much longer. And so the Minister of National Security spoke last night on news talking about the purchase of more cameras. They're going to spend more money, and they're going to look at the issue of maintenance of cameras. But cameras in the vicinity of major, and you're right, Wendell, of a major
And for the president,
of the head of state, and close to the entrance where that head of state would have to pass, not being working, has to be unacceptable. And how is that even allowed? How is that even allowed to happen? In addition to which, and I mean, this is just me thinking without knowing what took place, but an incident takes place. Anthony Francis, a hit and run has taken place. He's riding with a group, I think. He gets hit by what seems to be a teeter, and they, of course, I could understand the people with him being confused, and your first inclination is preservation of life. Is somebody all right? You're not necessarily watching at a vehicle, but the car has only certain exit points around the savannah.
Yep.
Have you monitored cameras along the routes of those exit points?
yes, because you have Lady Young,
Well, after that, there's three directions.
headed down Charlotte Street.
Cascade Way, Lady Young Way, or around the Savannah.
Right. So have you analyzed all of those routes? Because there are only certain places that car could go.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering how much follow through, or is it that they just look at the footage at that point and say, well, the footage is good and that's it?
Yeah.
You know? And I don't know.
But
I have to say I don't know.
But in this, even at that level of security, you must have cameras that are low enough to pick up number plates. You have to set it up in such a way that cameras must be able to pick up number plates in these areas, especially the entrance and exits of the president's house, the prime minister's residence, chief justice. You understand? Certain places, you must have cameras at a level that they pick up car number plates and faces. And the only way you can do that is at a camera at a lower level than the normal cameras up in the air.
Which takes us into the conversation of what is the update with regard to RFID license plates that they're supposed to roll out, and they make a big hullabaloo and say, oh, this is coming. Everything is always coming to Trinidad, and it takes forever to reach.
Yeah.
So these which are all part of the security apparatus, and anything in the security apparatus can't happen fast enough.
No, especially with the challenges that we face.
Exactly. So why is there no impetus and urgency that says, okay, if we're going to RFID license plates, let's roll this out. Okay? Roll it out and roll it out aggressively. Tell car owners that you all have to change your plates. Whatever it is, we're trying to accomplish this in 5 months or 6 months.
Yeah.
These are the locations, and you put 20 locations, even if it's temporary locations, because we just want to roll it out as fast as possible because we think this is going to make some impact in terms of the cars on the road, because cars carry criminals.
Yeah.
Criminals don't fly. They jump into vehicles. But I don't know, it just seems as if there is no drive. You hear of the RFID license plate coming and then there's this silence and you don't hear anything, and maybe it starts to crop back up again, and because all of those things can help in situations like this, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
All right, gentlemen, I got him on the phone. He's having problems with logging on.
I'm going to log on here now.
All right, well, you can try anytime there, so because we are streaming audio and video, so while we talk to you on the phone many times, you can try to log on to our Zoom. So good morning to you, Mr. Gideon Dixon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Mr. Steve.
All right. Morning. Of course, we have Richard Ragoobarsingh and we have Wendell Stephen.
Okay.
Good morning, Inspector. Thanks for joining us on the Power Breakfast Show.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Are you hearing us clearly, Inspector?
Yeah, I'm hearing you clearly.
Okay.
Are you all hearing me clearly?
Well, we're hearing you a bit scratchy and a bit low.
It sounded like you were sleeping, killing a good sleep there.
Yeah, like we wake you up.
Well, the thing is, I have a morning voice that is from most.
Don't worry too much. So a lot has been happening in the police service lately, Inspector, and it seems, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that we are not hearing from the Police Service Welfare Association on several issues that have been cropping up regarding the police service. I know that you all were very vocal at one point in time, certainly when you all first came into office. But it seems that we have not been hearing you all with all that's been happening in the police service. You want to correct that or refute that? Refute it or endorse it?
Well, your perception might be your reality. You know, we believe that we have been vocal when we need to be vocal. It's not everything you will want to comment on, and because you understand that there's a court of public opinion. But we, the association, speaks directly to the welfare of the officers. So we know exactly what our mandate is. And on most times, we will comment on those things. Right? Things that are operational most times fall under the purview of the Commissioner of Police. So I don't know what areas you would want to refer to.
Well, let's speak specifically to the issue of the killing of PC Jilks, who went on an exercise and lost his life, apparently or allegedly due to the bullet of another police officer who may have been behind him at the point in time. Give us an update. What's the position of the Police Service Welfare Association on that issue?
Well, again, that is an operational issue, and as you would be well aware, that matter is still engaging in investigation from the police aspect. Though the PCA would have done theirs and submitted their findings, you must appreciate that the police investigation is still ongoing. And matters that are ongoing like that, we would want not to comment too much. And you would appreciate that not just the family of PC Jilks was affected, you also have the families of the officers who were involved in the entire exercise. The people in the community was affected. So from a welfare perspective, we still have to treat with those who are affected, be it from a primary perspective or a secondary perspective. And in this instance, the officers on the exercise are all of concern to us, likewise the family members of the citizens. So I wouldn't want to comment much further beyond that point.
So what would be, you said that you as an association, you will have to treat with it. At what level will you be treating with it?
Right. So in the first instance, the officers who were part of the exercise, they would have reached out to the association, especially those who intimate in the exercise work process. They needed to get some legal support, so we provided legal support. There also was need for psychosocial support. We also provided psychosocial support. We also reached out to the family members of PCHs to provide the benefits that is associated with if an officer dies. So it have all those things that are taking place. And again, because Mr. Jones would have passed in the line of duty, there's also the need to look at the $1 million consistent with that. So it is a host of things. One of the things that people tend to forget, right? And we have been constantly coming under pressure, under attack. Police officers in Trinidad and Tobago, our leave have been restricted since December 2019. Leave being restricted since December 2019, we have been operating off and beyond. So, I think I know here.
Yeah, so you can unmute your microphone on. You can hang up the phone now, Gideon, and unmute your microphone on Zoom, and we can continue. There you go. All right. So we're just taking him off Zoom. We segue into take him off phone and segue into Zoom. All right. So unmute your mic now, Gideon, and you can continue.
Yeah, well, your mic.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gideon. Yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was making the point that police officers in Trinidad and Tobago have been operating on constant red almost 3 years now. So members of the public will come to judge the police subsequent to operation. When a person doesn't get leave or doesn't get a rest, you will appreciate that a level of burnout could take place. Now, he have a split second to make a life-threatening or life-saving decision, whilst the members of the public who weren't there would have every single moment subsequent to that to analyze, assess, come up with their own findings. And then we refer to the police officer being so trained. Yeah, we are trained, but look at when the training takes place. It takes place when the officer enters the organization. And sometimes other officers are not trained for periods long, the long gaps in between that. And it's only if you end up in an operational unit. These things are things that we need to look at, and these things are not just, but we oftentimes just see the resultant end, and we don't understand that the police officer continues to work at extreme levels, and that is unfortunate.
Are you suggesting then, Inspector, that officers be retrained, or that the training that they currently go through be extended, like what happens in the case of in the UK and some other jurisdictions?
All right, and you're onto something there. I'm saying from where we sit, training is essential. Training is life and death. Our officers need to have a continuum of training. Training must be ongoing. But even with that, remember we were in a pandemic and our leave was restricted. And there were at least 3 general elections. There was a carnival. There was a SOE. There was a state of, there was a destabilization of the country. There was the regulation keep changing over and over. There was every single thing that the average man who were given mundane time to treat with their business, the police officer continued to work. So when you amalgamate all this, and then you still expect that the rubber band, which was holding the strain and holding the fort for you, to function as normal, that can be correct.
Yeah. So what has been the recommendation of your association regarding that? Because we say that in light of the fact that we saw at the Savannah in after one of those fits an incident with police and they said it's soldiers, we can't confirm, where one of them was on the ground and was being kicked in the head. What would be your recommendation to deal with situations like that?
Situation like that. Now, one of the things you must appreciate, right? Most of our training is done with lethal force. And it being done with lethal force, when you have to go into default mode, you often utilize your lethal force, though we have a use of force policy. And the officer life most times is in danger. And also the perpetrator or anyone we are engaging, their life could also be in an imbalance. Training is the difference between life and death situation. That situation at the savannah could have gone wrong on many different scales. But at the end of the day, both the officer and the member of the public was able to walk out alive. Right? So we didn't lose no life. We saw from a public perspective the end result of what would have taken place. You have oftentimes seen episodes where officers engage and it is not that kind, both to the officer or to the member of the public. And the perception of the kick, did anyone know the level of force that was used? Was anyone injured as a result of that? Was officers injured in the melee to get to that point? Was any damage done to the police operational uniform or whatever the case is? So we often comment from a limited scope of information. And again, I understand that all of us have a role to play. And I also understand that the police and the public are one. But the perception that is also put outside there, that seems to be the narrative most times, is that it is them and it is we. And for most of it, the law-abiding citizens and the police officers, they work hand in hand. And it is those who choose to challenge law enforcement or choose to be on the wrong side of the law, we are often hearing, "You wicked!" The police, that is the cry. So let me examine it for its true worth. Is it that
the them and we, I think, is if I may interrupt, Inspector, the them and we has come across really from in a kind of way, a historical perspective of a lot of the citizenry of the police service, and not seeing them as being necessarily friendly. So when people have to go to police stations, they get intimidated. They don't feel, it's not a place that they feel that they want to go to because they feel they're going to meet less than in terms of customer service. They're going to meet grumpy police officers. This is all part of our history. I'm not saying that there weren't efforts to improve that customer service arm of the police service and how they interact with citizens. And there has been a lot of work done. But when you have incidents that crop up that paint the police in a less than attractive light in terms of the public's eye, when it seems as if in certain incidents the police officers have misled not only the public but misled their commanding officer, all of this eats away at the confidence of the citizenry in seeing you as the kind of outfit that you want us to see you as. And a lot of that in fixing has to come internally. And so I don't know what mechanisms, and certainly in the police and social welfare division of which you head, how do you all see that as a point in terms of their interaction with the citizenry? Because you must know that they're rogue police officers. You must know that police officers overstep their function sometimes in terms of constitutional rights of citizens. Citizens have taken them to court for such and have won. So people are aware of these breaches and many people have incidents where they've had to interface with the police service that has not been attractive. Now, yes, can all of this be fixed? To me, it has to be. because you're right, there has to be a partnership between the citizenry and the TTPS for us to eventually solve the crime problem that we have. And crime is the number one concern in the minds of Trinidadians and Tobagonians right now. It's the number one concern. And so a fix has to be found. So for every time something happens by police officers who don't meet the standard or did not act with the requisite standard in terms of their duty, it compromises the whole TTPS.
Richard, I cannot deny none of what you have said there. It is real as they are. And if we keep it real, we will also say that the police service continues to remain one of the functionary of state that we investigate our own. So the rogue elements you referred to, the court, which is the final appellate, will show that we have hundreds of matters before the open court. We also have our disciplinary process, which speaks to officers not operating as how they ought to. We have hundreds of matters that are being dealt with disciplinary and officers are being dealt with. We also are aware that the customer service and matters where persons would have won constitutionally against police officers, that persons were well within their rights to take the matters there. But one of the things that, from an association perspective, we believe that we as an organization have dropped the ball is the continuum of the customer service training and likewise the whole. So we as a people love quick fix. We don't want to hear that police officers are not there to respond to your cries and your concerns, that they are off training and retooling to be able to give you a first rule or a best practice response. We don't want to hear that. The public wants to hear that there's a police by almost every corner because crime is our number one issue. And I am saying that there needs to be a balance between how we respond to everything, the training associated with the officers, and the fact that at the end of the day, we are doing it because the court is there. So it's damn if I do and damn if I don't. But on top of that, I made a reference to leave being restricted for how long. I am also saying to you, when the authorities treat as the average citizen and expect us to operate as essential and super, then they are also failing in their bid to treat police officers the way we ought to be treated. Because we are pegged in negotiation where everybody is offered the same thing to them. So now, when everybody job spec remain the same for the last 20, 30, 40 years, our last job evaluation was 20 years ago. Our job spec would have evolved tremendously to this point. Our mere survival is an allowances. And then you cannot go on leave because you're going to lose your allowances. And then you are going to end up being below the poverty line. And then you are still offered what everybody else is offered. What motivation is there for police officers? What motivation? And then if you have to appoint a commissioner of police right now, and appointing him, you have to have your deputy commissioners of police operating too. And that commissioner of police needs to go on 14 days leave out of the country for whatever issue. The next person who's supposed to operate as the assistant, as the acting commissioner of police, their name have to go through a whole parliamentary process to determine who's going to act as a commissioner of police. Where in the world this has happened? Only in Trinidad and Tobago. it doesn't happen when the Prime Minister to lead the country. We certain that somebody else acts as the Prime Minister without any bureaucratic channels. It doesn't happen when the Chief Justice leaves, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Police Commissioner, the fire chief. It doesn't happen. Why is it happening when police have to operate? So we are operating almost with handcuffs on our hand.
Well, I mean, you're raising some valid points there.
Yeah.
That's some valid points, and I think they are pretty valid points in terms of the kind of leave, the kind of job specs, how much you all will have expanded, and how much your training may have changed to suit the dynamics, because I think police work is constantly evolving as technology changes and stuff like that. And should police officers be paid more? Absolutely. I don't think you can just lump it with everybody. I think all of that's valid, because you're all the ones putting your lives on the line in a very tangible, everyday situation. And so, yes, so I can't argue with those points that you're making, because I think they are valid.
But Richard, I'm agreeing with you, and I was about to say the same thing. But I don't know if we understand how important it is the police officer is in the lives of the average citizen, especially in these communities that clearly we seem to have a combative situation developing over and over again. How important it is for a police officer, and I'm sure that Mr. Dixon, as a senior officer, knows that there's a saying, "After God is police." You understand? Which the same people who may challenge you when you go into these communities will be also the first person to call you when there's a problem. So police officers must be aware of their importance in the lives of the average citizen. So you can't lump yourself as if, well, oh God, we're under pressure. Yeah, you're under pressure because that's the job you take.
And we are not denying that, you know. So let me just say this, right? I am from one of those communities. I was born, bred, and grown in Laventille, a place called Mozambique. You wouldn't know it, and most persons wouldn't know it. It is off Snake Valley. So I understand all these psychosocial dynamics that is associated there. So the greater portion of my life would have been spent there. I am not making no excuse for the police officer who has to operate there, because we understand that the zero tolerance policing in those communities is not the best approach. That is why I would want you to engage Senior Soup Subero, who's in charge of the interagency task force, where they would have put the Hearts and Mind program there. I would want to also have you engage Superintendent Ramkilawan, where we will have community police and youth groups operating inside there, so that we would be able to save the next generation. Because sometimes you must appreciate that the education system has been failing us, and also the community have been failing us. And the fact that the family have to go out to find the dollar, and the kids are left unsupervised, those things are also failing us. So when you compound everything and not say it's the resultant of the police being there, you would see that we all have a part to play in terms of how we fix the community. I can give you an example of a community called Roseman Drive in San Juan off Mission Road. I was once the SU in charge of that district, and I will often use it as an example. In and around that community is decay, total decay, everything you can think about. And that community, I would want to say, is a model community for Trinidad and Tobago. It is pristine. Every neighbor know each neighbor's name. They know each other contact number. They know where they work. They know the times they move. They have community meetings. The community is run in such a way that the kids of the community look forward to living in their parents' and grandparents' home, because they treat it as if it's theirs. But the communities that you referred to earlier, sir, just by information, is where there has been a gap between those who would have built the community in the first instance and those who have passed through the community and would have caused that no one taking ownership for the community. But the police have to go in there and try to fix what was broken. But that fixing cannot be by the police alone. The social arms of Trinidad and Tobago government needs to also be living inside here. We understand that sports and culture is a big, big thing in Trinidad and Tobago for us to be able to produce civic-minded, law-abiding citizens. Look at the budget. How much money is spent on sports and culture, which have placed Trinidad and Tobago on a map every single time once we go outside here. We spend more money on politics than we spend on sports and culture. So we need to look at how we do things, because we have been doing things the same way for so long. We believe that it is the correct practice, but we're not getting different results. Please, it is easy to take your fingers and point at us, because you know why? We deal with all the decay or all the fallout of civic-minded society.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you, but
who is fixing it before we reach there? We have tried proactive means to try to fix things. That is what we have been doing with the limited resources that we have. We have officers who don't have bulletproof vests, don't have basic things to operate. And they're giving themselves and the service to Trinidad and Tobago. When it's time for retirement, officers 2-3 years waiting for the government entity to be able to recognize that they would have served the country and served them well. So what is the joy or the passion in being a police when you are treated like everybody else?
Well, I mean, I had cause to say, Inspector, that you get the impression sometimes all people waiting on, and not just police officers across the public service, is promotion and pension, and without the consequence of performance and presence. You understand? So I'm hearing the cry of the police service, but still, these challenges that you all face, and especially in light of what's been happening lately. And I mean, the most glaring example of misbehavior, alleged misbehavior, let me put it in that way, because it's still under investigation, is your police officers misleading a police commissioner about an incident involving a police killing.
Right. I think we spoke on that topic earlier.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go into that again. I would want to say to you that all that I have said here just now speaks directly to motivation of officers.
Yeah.
And you must appreciate that even in the midst of all our challenges, which we don't publicly come out, because this conversation this morning started with there being a silence by the association in relation to topical issues. But I want everyone to know that it's not because, do not misconstrue silence for not understanding and appreciating where we are, because the answers to all what's taking place here is not a quick fix or overnight. Our officers have been impacted, their morale, because when something happens negatively with one, it affects all. And then the public has no sympathy for the police. The public didn't take into consideration the 3 years of no leave that I spoke of. The public can take into consideration that the court has its part to play. The public can take into consideration that we have thousands of investigations and persons before the court, and the public can take in those things. But the officer continues to be placed under extreme pressure. And we are measured by the measurement, the yardstick for measuring us is different from everyone else. And rightly so, you're correct. We know what we sign up for. But who is seeking those welfare and concerns of the members, the association? Are we going to make it a public phenomenon? The public don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. So I hear you. I respect your views. I respect the members of the public too, because I am a member of the public too. And yes, there is room for improvement in the TTPS. But there is also the purpose of those in authority must also be consistent with the attempts that we would want to make the internal changes that could bring about better results for the members of the public.
All right. Are you willing to take a couple of calls, Inspector, from our listeners?
I could take, yeah, that is not an issue.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so we'll open up our lines at this point. 222-TALK, 222-8255, 612-8255. North Americans, you can also weigh in toll free at 866-525-1099. And of course, we're speaking to Inspector Gideon Dixon, who is the head of the Police and Social Welfare Division.
Yeah. Inspector, what are your thoughts on the application process for a new commissioner of police and the fact that the former commissioner, Gary Griffith, has reapplied? What are your thoughts on that? The first time we get a laugh from Inspector Dixon for the morning.
And you know, normally radio, there is no visual behind radio, right?
Well, we have a visual today because you're live on YouTube.
Laughing and nobody sees me. But
we live on YouTube.
Yeah. We have a call though, gentlemen. So let's grab this call. Good morning,
Right,
caller.
let's grab this call and then we'll get back to it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Short and sweet, please. Go ahead.
I listened to your whole interview, and the inspector's perspective is the exact problem we have with the police. They seem to always want to talk about what's wrong with them, and never about what is going on with the citizens, the problems that the citizens having. Also, every question that you've asked him, he seemed to spin it to what's wrong with the police.
All right. Do you have a question?
But no, I just wanted to make that statement.
All right. Thank you so much.
You could never
All right. Thank you so much, caller. Lots of calls coming through. Limited time. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard, Wendell.
Morning.
Morning.
You,
Morning. Go ahead, caller.
also to the police officer there.
Oh, Gemma, morning.
Yes, morning. I just called to ask the officer, please, if he could control the hands of some of the police officers. There are some police officers very nice, but there are some, they are too aggressive and handling the weapon in the hand like America. Ask questions before they do what they're doing. Too much black lives stuff going down the drain, boy. Too much. Okay?
Thanks, Gemma. Yeah.
Good morning.
Okay. Morning.
Good morning.
Yes, morning.
Morning to the host and the inspector. I have a statement and a question.
All right.
We
We really want your
that,
question because we have limited time and lots of calls. So go ahead.
Okay, we know that the police officers have been less than professional during the COVID period, including we have been seeing videotapes of officers abusing the authority because even a simple person as a person pulling down their mask to eat, that was a problem for some officers. But my question to the inspector, was he implying that things like not adequately compensated at his salaries and so on were contributing to officers' behavior? Because at the end of the day, I think it's a moral issue on the part of officers.
Well,
All right.
they're only human, eh? So they're part of the community too, eh? So they must, some of them will react. Just like how we don't see all officers in the same light. I think we don't, the public can't all be seen in the same light too, because so when Inspector Dixon said the public, I mean, I don't know that that's the entire public too. Not all the public sees them in that light. But I want Inspector Dixon to respond to the issue of Gary Griffith reapplying for the position. He can't get away from that.
Let's grab these calls. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. First, let me congratulate the inspector for being re-elected as the president of the association. My question is, does the association both represent the junior and senior staff? Thank you.
I think it's just from Inspector.
Gideon, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I will answer two questions that I have to. The association represents every single officer, first and second division, and we have been doing so under one umbrella since 2005. Right? The question in relation to Mr. Griffith's application to become the commissioner again. Mr. Griffith is a member of the public. He's a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. I am aware that those criteria put out there. If Mr. Griffith believes that he has the threshold to meet the criteria, just like everyone else, you'd have been entitled to do it. The resultant effect is a process in being engaged as we speak. Upon completion, I expect that the Police Service Commission will, through their system of elimination, be able to get to the ideal candidates, so that the police service will have someone in a confirmed position to be able to carry the mandate to the people.
Answer like a politician there, Mr. Dixon.
Well, they're teaching me, I learning.
You're learning.
And you had a question, Wendell.
That was the question. He answered it just now.
Okay. All right. All right. Gideon, I want to thank you so much for being on the Power Breakfast show this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Mr. Gideon Dixon.
You all have made radio a little more interactive. Right? So keep up the excellent job.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All the best to you. Be safe.
Okay, you likewise.
All right. Take care. All right. Let's get into our news brief, all powered by Chamflair Auto Services.
This is your news bulletin